Hi, Bluetail Kitten here, but you can call me Blue. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a quick and simple little rat toy for your cat or kitten. I'm going to show you guys the step-by-step process that I did to make this toy. I can actually record my craft videos now that I have a tripod for my camera. Took so long, but I finally got one. Yeah, I'm going to show you how to make this, and of course record the reaction of the kittens that I have to this toy. Alright, hope you guys enjoy! First going to need is some cardboard to make your stencil. Any cardboard would do. This is just an old box that I flattened for this purpose. Some felt. I had this left over for a project, so I'm going to be using it for this project so I don't waste any fabrics. You can do any color of felt that you want. I just happen to have blue and red, so I'm going to make it a two-sided color toy instead of one color. But you can do whatever you wish. 2 colors of yarn or 1 color of yarn, whatever your preference is. I will show you what I'm going to be using these later on. So a pair of scissors, a crochet hook. This is a size, I believe, F. Yes, F crochet hook. A ruler for measurements. And a marker of any color of your choosing, just so you can mark what you're doing. And of course, some thread and a needle. So first I'm going to make the stencil of the actual body for the rat toy. I do it about maybe 5 or 6 inches, however big you want the toy, depending on the size of your cat. You don't want to do something too big for a kitten or anything too small for an adult cat. I'm going to do 5 inches just to be safe. And then what I'm going to do from the front here, I'm going to make a big like dome all the way to the 5-inch mark where I had it marked. If you need to add just a little bit more, if your like dome went a bit bigger than your original mark, that's fine, just add a little bit extra. But yeah, that is the gist of the size of the toy I'm going to be making. I'm going to be making 1 stencil since I'm going to be using it for both sides. Just perfectly fine. Next, I'm going to cut out the stencil. Alright, so that is my stencil. You wanted to get it as close as you could to the line that you made, just so you know what shape you're working with. You don't want to get something too big, as I mentioned, for a kitten, too small for an adult cat. Alright. Next, you're going to grab whatever felt you have or fabric. I prefer to use felt because it's thicker and the kittens get like their nails in it. It's not going to tear as easily as if it was like a thin piece of fabric. But you can do what you wish. If you know that your cats aren't prone to destroying their toys, you can go ahead and use any like scrap fabric you have, like if you have like an old shirt, an old cloth, something like that. But like I said, I'm using felt just because I like the thickness of it. What you're going to want to do now is trace your stencil. Try not to move it because then you'll lose the shape that you were initially trying to do. What I suggest when cutting them out of the fabric, don't cut it exactly on the line just yet. Get it out of the fabric that you're using first, and then go back and cut it to the line that you made. Just in case, you never know when you're cutting, in case if it's a big piece of fabric, your hand slips, you cut into your pattern, it's going to ruin what you just did. So just cut it out of the fabric first, and then cut along the edges to make the stencil. Quick tip, when you're doing the next side of the stencil, if you did your pattern facing the same way as how you originally made your stencil, what you're going to want to do next instead is you're going to end up flipping your stencil. The reason for this is like how you see here, I still have a little bit of like the marker on the fabric. If you were to do the other side of the fabric the same way, then when you end up stitching the toy together, you're going to have one side that's showing this on the outside, and you don't want to do that. So what you do is just flip over your fabric, so then the insides, they're both going to have the marker line in it, and the outside is going to look nice and pretty. and now these are your two halves of your rat toy. And like I said, as you can see, when we end up stitching it together, we're going to have the lined inside and then the unlined outside. So it'll make for a nice, neat toy. Alright, so what you're going to do next is get your pattern as close to each other as you can size-wise. If the size is off just a little bit, it's fine. When you stitch it together, it'll be okay. If you see like a little extra point like this, you can just trim it off so it's still even with each other. Alright, and make sure you're stitching right now with the lined side facing out, so you don't accidentally stitch the good side out, and then when you flip the toy over, when we stuff it, you're going to have the line facing out instead of the unlined, which is what you want. You want the unlined. So next you have your needle and your thread. I already threaded my needle just to make it a little bit faster and easier for you guys. You don't have to watch me struggling to put a needle and a thread together through a camera lens. So what you want to do first, for the stitching wise, you want to do on the back bottom. Just like that. The reason for this is we are going to be making a little tail for the rat toy as well as stuffing it. And the tail is going to go in the back here, obviously. So it's gonna, when we have to flip it, sorry, kind of looking at this a little bit. Okay, so when we have to flip it, it'll be easier for us to hide the closing stitch in the back than if it was in the front. So the type of stitching that I'm using here, I'm just going over and under, over and under. It's a nice, simple, like tight stitch, and you won't have to be afraid of your cat or kitten tearing at the seams that easily. And plus, when you're doing it like this, stitching through the inside first, it'll hide the seams a lot easier. You're just gonna go all the way around until we get to about here. That will be enough space for us to stuff the toy and then put the tail on. Alright, so this is the toy all stitched up to the closing, or the opening I'm gonna say, that I mentioned before that we want to leave. Alright, so next what we're going to do is actually flip the toy through the hole that we made. You want to keep the needle and the thread on, because you don't want to cut it off and then tie a knot and then re-stitch your needle. You want to keep the same one that you're doing so it's easier for you to stitch. So just pull it through. Take a little bit of like pushing and pulling to get it. If you end up having the point here stuck, you can just get your marker and just kind of push it through here to help you get that point up. What I do is just kind of squeeze and push up like this as I'm doing. It helps get some of the point out, and then just kind of go in there. If you have nails like me, just go right in there, pinch, and pull until you get your point out, and then just kind of like this, and there we go. Is how the toy looks like, and as I said, you're getting the unlined outside, the lined inside, and it'll look nice. Okay, so what we're going to be doing next is making the tail for our rat toy. So if you guys don't know how to do the crochet knot or start it off, that's perfectly fine. I'm here to show you guys how to do this stuff. So what you want to do, just like that, you want the yarn end here to loop over, and then the rest of the yarn to loop under. Then you're going to turn and have it go over like this, so you're kind of making like a little pretzel formation. Grab and pull. So then this is how you start the crochet knot. If your hole here is too big, just pull on to the rest of the yarn here. The longer piece is connected still to the yarn ball. Just pull till you have a good size yarn. If this tail here is too long, that's fine. We're going to end up cutting it off anyway at the end. Then pull your needle through. I'm so used to crocheting, I just do this like on instinct. You want to put the yarn over your pointer finger of your non-dominant hand, go under, over your ring middle finger, and then have your ring finger and your pinky finger grab the end here, so then you have a good control of your yarn. And then you're going to use your thumb and your middle finger to grab the stitch you're working on. Pull the yarn over like this, and then pull through. You're going to be controlling how tight you do the knot with your pointer finger. And then as you move this, as you move up with the stitch, just grab with your middle finger and thumb, yarn over, and pull through. I'm going to do about 15 of these stitches. That's about a good size yarn tail for this rat toy. Alright, and these are the 15 stitch tail that I have done for the rat toy. What you're going to do here, keep the needle on the hole, the last hole that you did, and then cut off a good bit, like an inch or two of yarn from the actual yarn ball. So now we're going to knot off the tail. Grab how you were doing your stitches with a little bit of yarn you have, yarn over, pull through, but instead of continuing to stitch, remove the needle, extend the hole a little bit so you have enough space to put your finger through, so you can grab the little piece of yarn of the tail that's left, and then you have your knot. You can leave this tail a little bit. It'll be easier when we close the actual cat toy to have the little thread here, instead of like trying to squeeze, or not squeeze, but like stitch onto like one of the stitches here. You at least can stitch on the knot, and I'll have this tail in here for like a little extra help for you guys. And at the end here, we want to tie a like double knot. So just knot once, and then knot again, so you have a secure knot at the end of your stitch, so the actual stitches don't come undone. And then just cut off the rest of this tail. So that is our little mouse tail. We'll put that aside over here, out of the way. So then next, if you wanted to, you could also do another color of the yarn tail. So you have two different tails colors. I'm gonna do that just because it's more entertaining. It's more fun to have two different colors instead of one color tail. I'm a colorful person, so I like this. So I'm just gonna do the same thing I did with the blue yarn. The 15 stitches, the knots, and so forth. Alright, so these are my two yarn tails that I'm going to be doing. Very interesting, right? You could have, before you cut the yarn here, you could have actually tied the tails together so they would be together. But me, I'm going to leave it separate just so it's more entertaining, more amusing to the cats rather than having it as one piece. It'll be two pieces. They'll have more to play with. But what I am going to do at the top here to make it easier when I stitch it together is just knot the top pieces together. So then they don't come apart when I'm stitching the toy closed, and I'm not struggling to keep them lined up with each other. They'll be together at the top. Alright, so that is my double tail that I have going on here. Move that aside. So when it comes to stuffing the actual cat toy, I personally don't use stuffing just because I am afraid that if the toy does come undone, or for some whatever reason, that the kittens end up playing with the stuffing, they accidentally eat the stuffing. So I like to do it without stuffing or with something that's safe for them, which is going to be the yarn. If your cat happens to be old enough for catnip, as you're stuffing the toy, you can actually sprinkle a little bit of catnip in the toy to make it more attractive to the cat. But since the kittens that I'm going to be giving this toy to is too young for catnip just yet, I'm not going to be doing the catnip stuff. I'm just going to be doing the yarn stuff. So what you want to do is get your yarn. It doesn't matter what color yarn you're going to do for the stuffing. I'm just going to do blue. This blue, obviously, if you haven't noticed, is my favorite color. So what I'm going to do is just wind, make like a ball, a mini ball of yarn with the actual ball of yarn. Alright, once you have your ball of yarn, just cut it off. Don't worry about tying it off or anything. This is going to go stuffed into the rat toy. You won't need it to be tied off. And I'm going to do a second one just because I think that one is not going to be big enough to be stuffed. This fully stuffed the whole rat toy. But if I make it too big, it's not going to fit through the hole that I made. So I'm just going to make another yarn ball, and that should be enough to actually stuff the rat toy. You want to try to get roughly about the same size. Doesn't have to be exact. But you don't want one like itty bitty and one like really big, and it's gonna make the toy a little less proportionate than what we're trying to go for here. That looks about right. They're both around the same size. And I'm gonna do again, just snip up the extra bit, get this yarn out of the way, and then we have the 2 mini yarn balls that I'm going to be used to stuff our toy here. So what you want to do, you want to get the opening as open as you can. If it undoes a little bit of stitch that you have here, that's fine. We're just going to pull through and then I'll tighten the stitch back up again. So what you want to do, get your first yarn ball, just kind of push it in as much as you can. If you get a little like nose like this that isn't stuffed, that's fine. It's still stiff enough that it'll look perfectly fine. It's not going to squish as much down. If you're using felt, if you're using fabric, you could also try and do like get some yarn and just stuff it in there before stuffing your first yarn ball. If you're worried about it being too sorry, I got distracted by my dog. Too flat. And you want to get the second yarn ball in. Just gonna tuck in any extra yarn that you have. And then there is your rat toy all stuffed with a safe alternative to stuffing that I consider it's safe actually. So alright. It's gonna look a little funky, but you know, it'll work. The cats aren't going to complain. They're gonna probably like the thickness of it and the texture of it. So what you want to do before we stitch on the tail, we want to just do a bit of a closing stitch going on. So what you do, you go through, kind of how you were doing with the over under, but this time instead of starting over, you're going to start by stitching it through here. And then just stitch. These ones you want to try and get as close as possible to each other, just because these are more at risk of being undone by your cat or kitten. Okay, once you get to like here where you have just enough space, you're almost done. You want to get your tails here. If you want to cut off a bit extra of the yarn tails here, if they're too long like mine are, that's perfectly fine. Just snip off the little extra bits. And then you're going to want to tuck in the yarn tail to the knot that you made. If it helps, you can grab onto your tail that you stuffed from the outside to keep it in place. And then all you have left to do is close the stitch. When you get to the tail, you want to get it in as much as possible. So what you're going to have to end up doing is going for the last stitch, instead of going around like we've been doing, just stitch it back in the same direction you came. And make sure it goes through the yarn that you have tucked in there, the yarn knot. And just kind of go back and forth doing that until you close your toy. If it helps, you can hold it like this, so you have like the bottom seam looking up at you. So then the stitching is easy for you. Just go back, forth, back, forth. And once you can give the tail a little tug. If you don't feel like it's gonna come undone, then what you do, next, from the last stitch you did, I just happened to be on the right side here. Loop over, and make sure this time you've been avoiding the needle going through the hole like this. You've been having the needle go under the yarn or thread. You want this time the thread to be under the needle, so that when you pull, you have like a knot going. And then you do the same thing again. If it helps, you can just have the thread Mine's getting a little tangled. Give me 1 second. Okay, you can have it like your finger through the actual like yarn loop that you're doing, and your needle on the other hand, and then just thread the needle through to make your knot. You want to do that like 2 or 3 times just to make sure you actually have a good strong loop knot. Again, just test the tails. Everything looks fine. So what I'm going to do next is just snip off the tail here, get as close as possible. You don't want to do it too close because then you could accidentally cut off the knots you just did. Alright, and then if you want to, I have both of my yarn, the mini balls pointing like towards the front here. What I'm going to do is just squeeze one ball to the end. So then it looks stuffed without it being fully stuffed. And I know if you guys are looking at tutorials of making pet toys, some people probably make like little like ears or eyes and or nose for their rat toys. I'm not going to do that because I consider those choking hazards for the cat or kitten. If they were to get somehow undo them, they're going to be like little specks of fabric all over the place. They could easily eat them, and I don't want to risk that for especially kittens, since they don't know a lot yet about what to eat and what not to eat. So I'm just going to leave it like this. The cat's not going to complain. The eyes and ears are more for like aesthetic pleasingness to the person, but I don't really care. As long as the cat is entertained, I'm fine with it looking like this. But yeah, this is the simple little rat toy for your cat. I'm going to go test it on the kids and see how they like it. So the kittens really enjoyed that cat toy, which makes me really happy and means that it was a full-on success. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and look forward for more craft videos in the future. Till next time, Kitten out.